everyone. Thanks for being with me. I'm going to talk today about confronting our past. Why it is that we may choose not to, what gets in the way, what limits us from confronting issues which, to all of us, seem to prevent us from being the person that we would like to be. Now, the two things that prevent us from confronting our past primarily are guilt and shame, that there have been some behaviours that we've participated in the past which have caused us to feel guilty of what we've done, shamed of what we've done and how that's impacted the people around us. So why is it that we often feel reluctant to be able to talk about, have conversations in relation to the things that we've done with those people that we've hurt? Why is it that we don't do that? Well, the brain is a unique organ because we're taught that we cannot do things which we know are going to be harmful to us. A couple of simple examples of that are that we know that we can't put our hands on a hot plate, that we can't put our hands in front of a fire and stick it into the fire. We know that we just can't do those things. We're also taught that, we don't run across busy roads without looking. There's things in our world that we're told that we can't do because they're dangerous to us. So the same applies to us discussing any trauma or any issue that we've had in our lives, that emotionally we're told that it is dangerous for us. Now, the brain processes that in the most bizarre way, but I guess we can understand why it does, because the brain will tell us that, like, we can't touch anything that's hot, that emotionally we can't experience or should not experience or should at least avoid experience anything that has emotional pain. The brain actually struggles to differentiate between the thought processes attached to touching something that's hot versus also attaching to something that is emotionally painful as well. It doesn't differentiate between the two. So we're encouraged, just because we are told that we can't go down paths which are painful. And so we need to be able to confront that notion and teach ourselves to think differently about emotional pain. So confronting our past is a process we need to engage in order to be able to confront the pain that sits in our past. Now, whatever we've experienced in our past will determine who we are today. If we feel ashamed or guilty of something, then that shame or guilt will play itself out in our relationships with others. We might find it hard to engage with others. We might find it difficult to develop relationships. We might be confronted by the similar things that we've been doing in the past. We might be confronted with them again today, and we would therefore avoid engaging in those activities. We might have had a bad experience, for example, just standing up in front of a group of people and talking about an issue that was important to you and not receiving the response that you wanted or being criticised for what it is that you've said. That would mean you don't want to have to go through that shame or embarrassment again, so you will avoid it, as opposed to doing it again and having a completely different type of experience. So that is a small example of what it's like. But for many of us who have been down childhood traumas in particular, experienced things when we were kids that we believe were basically about our involvement, even though we were not responsible for whatever happened to us, we will often find that those issues still sit with us today, that they occupy part of our thought process. They make us think about who we are in ways that are unhelpful. Now, if we fail to have conversations about them, if we fail to externalize those events in our lives, they will continue to traumatize us. We must find a way to get rid of them. And it's a bit like lancing a sore, lancing a pussy infection, for example. If we get rid of that infection and allow it to clear out, The wound will heal, and even though there may be some scarring, at the end of the day, the infection has gone. Trauma is a bit like that. It is an infection, and we must find ways to be able to eradicate it. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that you can completely get rid of every trauma or everything that's happened to you in your past, because you can't. Some of that stuff, for a lot of people, is so traumatic that it just never, ever really goes away. But we can find the space to talk about it. Now, my experience is that you get a group of people who will find ways to talk about their past or whatever on a continuing basis. And we need to be mindful that for many people, that is the way they choose to deal with it. The problem with that is that they're choosing to live with it on a continuing basis. It is just a story they reiterate over and over again about things that may have happened to them. And I'm sure that all of us have had that experience where we've had people in our lives who just want to continually talk about the things that have happened to them, and they never move beyond it. And the reason why they never move beyond it is because it remained simply a story. Now, we can tell the same story over and over again. I've done that in my own life about interesting and funny things that have happened to me in my family growing up. We all have those stories. What we often fail to do, though, is when it comes to traumatic events, we fail to talk about the emotional impact that it has had on us. So what are the feelings and emotions that sit around that particular trauma? And how is it that they're playing out today? How do those emotions, sense of rejection, fear, hate, and a whole host of other feelings that we might have around that. Betrayal is one that often sits with people. So how do we express those emotions in ways which help us to understand what they are and how they play out in our lives today? And one of the issues, and I've talked about this in a previous video some time ago, is that one of the things we fail to do is to identify a specific feeling that has impacted us. Often, we talk about feelings in terms of 3 or 4 or 5 feelings that we have. So we say fearful, resentful, frustration, we might say afraid. So we have 4 or 5 feeling words that we may use to describe an event in our lives, but we just keep reiterating them. We keep talking about them over and over again, to the point whereby if we say, I feel resentful about something, and we seem to be resentful about everything we talk about, then the word resentful or sad or depressed or whatever the word we choose to use, if we keep reiterating that over and over again, it becomes more and more meaningless to us. But if we find different words, real words, words that, and by real I mean words that have great significance to you that you've never used before to describe a past experience, then that can give you a new context in which to live. Because some of the feelings that we've had in our past, so we'll take the word betrayal, for example. So if we've got an incident, I have a few, where I've felt betrayed in my life, and I'm able to look at the word betrayal, I will find that there are other times in my life where I've felt betrayed. And when I link all of those together, I find that my response to being betrayed is particularly strong, because all of those linkages come together in the one moment where I might feel betrayed. So this past stuff that we have, if we don't understand the feeling words, if we don't understand actually what that means, we are not accepting that it has happened probably to us many, many times throughout our lives. So we can deal with that. We can confront it by understanding where it plays out in our lives. And often what we'll find is the intensity that's associated with a particular experience becomes more and more intense because we have never addressed where those feelings sit with us throughout our lives. So if someone says something or does something in a way that is a reaction far over the top than what it should be, that it is not all that contextual, then we need to work out what it is that is affecting that from our past. I hope that makes some sense to you. It's a long and involved conversation about how we go about confronting past issues. If you'd like to have a conversation with me about any of this, you can do so below, or you can email me on this particular email address. Happy to have a conversation with you about any of this. And also, if you'd like to get some further information about making more and more of these videos over time, feel free to subscribe also to my channel so you can get notified in the future. What I'm trying to do is talk a little bit more about some of my practices and some of the ideas that I've had over the last 30 plus years, hopefully with the view that it will help you to find better ways of functioning and managing your life. If you find that helpful, let me know. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.